Everyone's screaming Panther, but the ghost in our Colorado woods is a melanistic bobcat caught flicker by flicker on trail cams. Chickens vanish, a trap is scheduled, and one quiet researcher vows to save it by doing almost nothing. How do you stop a capture but by standing still? Watch the choice. Night presses white upon the drainage and the trail camera wakes with a blink no brighter than a star. Snow breathes, the lens finds motion where there should be none. A seam of moving darkness, low and deliberate, ink sliding over paper. Ear tufts flick once. Vapor knots from a small mouth, a thread of silver that frays and vanishes.
One paw arranges itself with surgical care, then another, stitching the creek edge with quiet grammar. The sensor ticks again, frost halos the LED. The body is black but not empty, ghosted spotting shimmers when the moon tips its bowl. A tail like a comma, brief and certain, writes itself against the snow. Somewhere beyond a porch light hums. Inside a living room, a phone chimes, a thumbnail loops the clip. There, pause it. A finger hovers. What is that? Another voice, soft, almost hoping. Panther! Branches refuse to speak. The cat turns its head toward the wind and blinks once, slow as a promise withheld. It continues along the willow shadows, a ripple returning to the river. By morning, the town has the video. Comments multiply like snowflakes on glass. Panther? One repeats, then again, then again. The researcher sees the thread unfurl and does not type. She lets silence hold. On the ridge, crows lift, black thread stitching the pale winter sky. Riley Hart is 32 and practices disappearance like a craft. She keeps her gear in mute colors, records in pencil, and walks the edges where human noise thins to breath. Years ago, she learned the hard rule from a frightened fox kit that bolted at the click of a shutter. If she is noticed, she is the problem. Now she runs her work alone, independent, small grants, borrowed office above the feed store, tracking without tugging, asking the land to speak first. The email arrives at dawn, forwarded trail cam screenshots, timestamps, excited subject lines. Below them, a second thread, rancher complaints, missing hens, a photo of a splintered coop door. 10 minutes later, the parks office calls. "We're getting heat," the coordinator says. "Can you take a look unofficially? We need something level-headed." Riley listens, eyes on the weather vane outside her window. "I'll look," she says. Quietly. By afternoon, a warden meets her in the lot, breath steaming. He taps a clipboard, careful voice softening the shove inside it. "Proactive management," he says. "Public's rattled. If this cat keeps showing near houses, we may need to set a culvert trap, health check, relocation if necessary." Riley feels the sentence scrape the air. "If my presence changes the behavior," she says, "I'm already too loud." He studies her. "Then be quieter than usual." Back in her office, she spreads county maps under a brass ruler, the paper smelling faintly of dust and ink. She draws a soft loop, connecting Cottonwood, Culvert, pasture edge. Goal: map corridors before attention narrows them. Give the cat a seam to move through while the town hums itself tired. She tucks a notebook into her pack, checks for scentless layers, and stands a moment with the window open to the cold. "I'll meet you where you can refuse me," she says to no one, and means it. Then she turns off the light. Her phone vibrates again. "Panther," a text reads. She replies nothing, closes the door, and walks out. Riley builds a wall of small truths. SD cards from volunteers clatter into a ceramic bowl, sharpied labels, duct tape tabs, a drift of pocket lint and hay. She slides one after another into the reader. Screens blooming with snow and dark and the occasional ghost. Deer hips past the lens. A coyote tasting wind, a neighbor's dog, bright with a dangling tag. A boy on a fat bike cuts a moonlit S and is gone. Then, not absence but motion, the moving seam, black on white, low, exact. She logs everything. Time, stamps, temperature, wind bearing, barometer, moon phase. "Show me the rule, not the rumour," she says into the quiet, pencil ticking its metronome. Tick, tick, draw. Coffee warms the knuckles of her writing hand. She pins each sighting to a laminated county map, coloured heads of sewing pins making constellations that only the creek understands. A line emerges. The cat favours the borders. Fence lines stitched with rabbit runs, culverts that pipe water under the road, the thin willow ribbon where meltwater writes its April name, even in February. The dots don't march outward like a teenager leaving town. They circle back, again and again, to the broad fan of cottonwoods raked by old floodlines. She layers wind roses over the map, watches how the dots thicken on nights when the breeze falls out of the north and the neighbourhood's trash lids rattle less. She graphs the hours, a pulse before dawn. Between 4 and 5:10, then a thinner echo at dusk. 2 quick beats, 1 long. "All right," she murmurs. "That's your cadence." A volunteer drops off another card, cheeks red from the cold. "You think it's a panther?" "It's a bobcat," Riley answers, gentle but firm. Rare colouring, same rules. Back at the table, she draws a soft loop with her ruler's edge, a corridor thin as breath-linking pasture margin to willow shadow to cottonwood fan, not dispersal wandering, no flares, no panic zag, deliberate, settled, a life shaped by risk management, traffic, people, something unnamed that keeps the heart near home. "If you're avoiding," she says, setting one last pin, "show me what you choose instead. I will listen." Riley tunes herself like an instrument until the land can't hear her. She empties pockets, strips jingling zippers with cloth tape, swaps crackly nylon for wool that moves like breath. Her quiet kit is stripped to bone, unscented base layers, soft-soled boots, notebook and pencil, anemometer the size of a sparrow, red headlamp, nitrile gloves, a tiny roll of flagging she rarely uses, and nothing edible at all. On the porch, she opens each piece to the wind. If the air catches laundry soap, it goes back inside. She rubs her palms on snow to rinse skin noise, then stands still until her pulse slows. "You don't announce," she tells herself, a habit half sermon, half scar. "You ask." Out in the willow belt she practices vanishing, feet placed midline, heel barely kissing earth, weight poured forward in a slow paw, knees flex to cradle sound. She tests the anemometer, then closes her eyes and reads breeze on cheekbone instead, counting to the animal's cadence, 2 quick, 1 long, until breath and step agree. Her rules are small and absolute. No bait, no call lures, no recorded distress cries. She will not publish coordinates, not even fuzzy ones that internet sleuths can sharpen. She carries a brush to erase her own scuffs from crusted snow and uses it sparingly, better to choose routes that need no correction. If a strand of hair lifts from barbed wire, she photographs, leaves it. A ping from her phone, a local influencer, heart emojis and a winking offer, night vision collab, save the Panther merch link ready. Riley stares, feeling the trap inside the favor. She texts back 4 words. Protect the cat's silence. At dusk, she rehearses refusal in her body. When a jay scolds, she doesn't answer. When a deer lifts its head, she softens her shoulders and looks away. If she avoids, we obey, she says, whisper thinning to vapor. The red light clicks on once, then disappears behind her glove. In the margin between creek and fence, she becomes a contour line, present, unremarkable, already forgetting herself. Be smaller than your shadow, she reminds herself, and let the land carry the story for now. The drainage is a shallow crease between oak and willow, a winter seam that keeps its own counsel. At -10, the snow squeaks under any thought of weight, so Riley commits to stillness. She chooses the leeward side of a low hummock, nestles in, and lets the cold move through her like measured water. Breath in, hold, 2 quick, 1 long, the rhythm the map taught her. Above, 2 crows cut the morning, wings stitching black thread across the pale sky. One lands on a bent cottonwood and shakes frost like a small applause. Riley smiles without teeth. "Tell me, but don't announce me," she whispers into the bark. Hours thin, the world makes needle sounds, a frozen reed tinkling, a distant fence wire humming. Then far off, a bobwhite whistles its name, abrupt and lonely. Riley feels the note touch her ribs and pass on. She does not turn. She lets the sound draw a circle she will not cross. Wind tilts. Her cheek reads the change first, a shy draft from the culvert mouth. She lowers her eyelids until the world becomes shapes and edges. A dark ribbon might be shadow, might be body. She waits for the second beat that would make meaning. None comes. A distant engine coughs somewhere in the subdivision. A dog barks at the idea of a fox. The cold climbs her wrists. She measures time on the slow melt of breath against her scarf, on the patient ache in her thighs. "If you're out there," she says, almost prayer, "choose the safer liner." The willow tips do not answer. Nothing arrives but quiet. Accepting the no, she unfreezes by degrees and peels herself from the snow's memory. She walks wide, skirting her own stakeout, and only then allows her eyes their scan. There, small, round impressions, toes fluffed by tiny tufts, placed with surgeon's care. The edges are blurred by blown sugar, but the floor of each print is blue cold, hours old, not minutes. Riley kneels, hand hovering above the story. A second track intersects, heavier, longer, a human tread with a waffle pattern and a hurried stride. The boot prints aim toward the culvert. She exhales. "Not today," she says softly. "Good." She brushes snow from the print and leaves unnoticed. The storm never came, only a sift of sugar that reset the ledger. Riley walks the corridor after dawn and reads what the night left behind. The first line is restraint, overstep patterns where each hind paw drops into the front paw's hollow, saving heat, saving sound, saving self. She matches her breath to the cadence and steps beside, not on the message. On a fallen cottonwood, a narrow path of prints climbs the log and descends heel to toe along the spine. Balance practiced like a monk's vow. She kneels to feel the softness of rot without breaking crust. "You wanted elevation," she murmurs. "You wanted a view that doesn't betray you." Scat under willow tells the rest. Rabbit fur, splinters of vole, a glitter of beetle shell. She photographs, seals the bag she will never fill, and leaves it where it works as a boundary stone. Farther on, a smudge on barbed wire catches her eye. 2 hairs, night dark with a faint brown at the root, melanism rendered in threads. She lifts her phone for a macro, then lowers it. "Evidence without theft," she says. "Proof that keeps the owner." The stride changes in the meadow where snow is thin. One print sets a hair lighter, the arc of the hip guarding weight as if from memory. Riley's mouth tightens. She measures the spacing. Short burst, pause, short burst, longer pause. Pain leaves its own grammar. Close to the fence, she sees it, the faint, tidy scar where fur once grew back in a ring. A snare mark, old, not inflamed, but present as a rule burned into the body. A pickup idles on the distant road, then moves on. Riley does not wave. She lowers to her heels and makes herself small. "I see you," she says, not loudly, a promise more than a claim. "I see how you do not step." A jay rattles, wind combs the willow. Ice ticks in the reeds. The map in her head redraws itself around the animal's refusals. No open pasture, no direct crossings, no linger at the culvert mouth. A life braided from detours, tuned to the quietest exits. This life is a sequence of avoids, she breathes, and she chooses to avoid too. Pre-dawn holds the drainage like a cupped hand. Fog pooled low and faintly luminous, the ground a frosted page. Riley comes on foot along the pasture's broken margin, stops before her steps can speak for her, and lets the cold quiet her pulse. Two quick, one long. When breath no longer hurries,
she edges into the willow fringe and becomes a patient shape among patient shapes. A moth touches her cheek and is gone. Somewhere far off, a truck door thuds, then silence returns and thins like sugar in water. Riley lowers her gaze to keep her face from reading as stare, hands open at her sides, shoulders rounded to dusk. "If you refuse me, I will listen," she whispers, then says no more. The shadow arrives without ceremony. It is not big, only exact. The seam of darkness unsewn from the fog. Ears with inked tufts, paws that set as if closing small doors. When the head turns, the eyes hold a coin of amber each, steady as held breath.
The distance is a classroom length, 30 meters and a lifetime. Riley lets the animal count her, edges, angles, the way light fails along her coat. She tilts her chin a fraction away, softens her knees, lets the hand nearest the cat rest against a willow trunk so the tree can take the message. "I am smaller than my shadow," she says inside her mouth, a sound meant only for her own restraint. The cat blinks once, slow as weather. Riley blinks once, slow as answer. Nothing else moves. A crow passes overhead, silent for once, black thread ghosting the paler sky. Frost lifts in the cat's breath and folds back into its dark. And for 3 heartbeats, the world goes exact. 2 quick, 1 long. Riley could raise the camera. She feels the tug like a hook in old scar tissue, the urge to prove, to fix, to argue with rumor by trapping light. Her fingers do not rise. Her throat tastes like cold iron tonight. "You are not for my keeping," she breathes. "You are for your own choosing." The cat decides without drama. A whisker tilts. The body pours sideways into willow shadow, black on black, vanishing the way ink disappears into water. Snow accepts the pads and holds no sound. Riley stays a beat longer, then bows her head and steps back the way the fog unwove, leaving no line but breath to say she was ever there. By week's end, the quiet has a crowd. The clip loops in diners, on school bus seats, on a flat screen above a hardware store till. Every retelling adds a half-inch of shadow. "Panther," someone insists over eggs. "Big as a lab, at least." A laugh answers, thin as a saw. "Bigger." At a town hall, the rancher with missing hens stands rigid at the mic. "This isn't city drama," he says. "It's feed and blood." His wife folds and refolds a paper list. Riley sits near the back, hands under her coat. When the moderator asks for experts, she stands enough to be heard. "It's a bobcat," she says. "Melanistic, small cat, edge traveler." Murmurs rise like wind through poplar leaves. The rancher stares. "Small cats kill too," a wildlife officer calls between meetings, voice softened but brisk. "We're considering a live capture health check. Get ahead of complaints. Show we're proactive." Riley watches crows stack themselves on a cell tower like dark notes. "If you must do something visible," she says, "move garbage day, reinforce coops, shift a bus stop 50 yards. he exhales. That won't read as action. The photo page makes it worse. Someone posts coordinates pulled from a fence line miles off. Out come headlamps, hoodies.
A drone that sounds like a mosquito with ambition. Teenagers skitter through the willow, their laughter and breaking. A boy whispers, "If we see it, we'll go viral." A girl whispers back, "If it sees us, we're nothing." Riley considers releasing her corridor map, blurred scales, text, to drown the noise with fact. The impulse tastes like sugar and salt. Share enough to protect her, she tells herself, not enough to deliver her. She drafts a statement and deletes it. Instead, she sends an email. No coordinates. Coexistence, steps attached. Then, she prints flyers that say, lock trash, secure chickens, leave wildlife wild.
A warden corners her by the trucks. "We need something we can show," he says. She meets his gaze and keeps her voice level. "Show restraint." He shakes his head, weary. Restraint doesn't trend. Night gathers, louder. Headlights comb the culvert mouth like searchlights at a premiere. In her office, Riley turns the trail cam screen face down and listens to the hum outside, the hive mind itching for spectacle. "Hold," she says to the room, to herself, to the map. "Hold the line that keeps her invisible." The meeting happens in a break room that smells like coffee and wet wool. Charts crowd the corkboard. A whiteboard promises solutions in marker. Dr. Shah, a collar and transmitter biologist with tired eyes, lays out the case. If we tag her, we can prove she's not stalking bus stops. Data protects animals. Riley folds her hands around a paper cup she won't drink. Data also paints a target, she says. A map can be a mercy or a manhunt. Shah circles a satellite image. GPS points let us shift traffic, close trails on the nights she crosses, warn chicken owners. We can show we're not asleep. Your trap costs her trust, Riley answers. Sedation with an old snare scar in play, stress in storm week. A culvert is a loud room you never forget. We don't get to keep asking her to forgive us. A warden leans back, neutral. We need something besides don't. Offer do, Riley says. Trash audits, coop grants, bus stop shift during pre-dawn pulse, scatter the dog walkers from that willow belt for 2 weeks, publish a heat map with a 10-acre blur, not coordinates, build safety without theft. Shah rubs her brow. Non-invasive is great until it fails. You keep saying, respect the no. What if respecting the no gets her killed? Riley holds the room a beat. Our job isn't to prove we can catch her. Our job is to prove we can refrain. Her voice thins, then steadies. Say it out loud with me. No bait, no call boxes, no playback. If she avoids, we obey. The room goes quiet, except for the refrigerator's restless motor. Someone coughs, someone else scribbles the rule and underlines it twice. The superintendent slips in late and slides a paper to the table. New memo, he says. Contingency plan. If sightings continue near the elementary bus turn, we're authorized to trial a culvert trap. Limited public window, health check narrative. Riley reads the phrases and feels them catch on skin. A trap to reassure the frightened, she says softly, will frighten the animal you claim to reassure. Shah's reply is almost a plea, really. Then give me a reason not to build it. Riley looks to the map, to the cottonwood fan she could find blindfolded. Because she's already told us what she needs. Corridors, darkness, distance. We can be the distance. She sets the cup down. Draw the line now, or the line will be the trap walls later. The weather radio clicks from static to warning. Winter storm watch. Heavy snow by nightfall. Gusts that shave the world to bone. Riley notes it in the margin of the map and feels the room grow narrower. Snow means clean pages. Snow means stress. Both are true. Her inbox pings. Subject line, action window. The memo is blunt. Trap crew on standby. Culvert at Cottonwood Drainage B. Dawn, 2 days from now. Narrative, health check for public reassurance. She reads it twice, then a third time. Her throat remembers the ring scar scrolled into those prints. "You don't put an old wound in a loud room," she says to the empty office. "Not for optics." She goes out anyway. The air is chalk dry, cold, knifing through seams. In the willow belt, the first stray flakes arrive. Powder that can't decide. Fresh tracks braid the meadow's crust, neat as stitches, angling toward the culvert named in the memo. The cadence is there, 2 quick, 1 long, but the long beat stretches, guarded. A state technician stands by the culvert mouth with a laser level and clipboard. Generator hum idles beside his boots. Riley approaches on the fence side, hands visible. "You setting now?" "Survey," he answers, not unkind. Measuring angles, confirming clearances, lining up the team. If we do it fast. "She's carrying a history," Riley says. "Snare mark, left hind. A culvert is a stress box." He shrugs, mouth a thin line.
"Above my pay grade, orders are orders." He hesitates. "Look, it's a health check. If she's lame, she gets treated. That plays well." "Plays well," she repeats, tasting the theatre. The generator sputters, catches, throws a thin exhaust ribbon that rolls low over the snow. A crow drops onto the crossbar above them, puffs itself against the cold, and stares like a magistrate. On the walk back, she argues with herself in quiet sentences. A collar could define safer nights, close a road, fund a corridor. A tranquilizer could catch a rising infection before it blooms. "If I knew the harm," she says,
"I would barter pain for mercy." But the calendar is not medicine, it is schedule and show. The storm begins in earnest, thick flakes erasing boot logic. Riley stops at the ditch to watch meltwater write its thin black script. Decision coils, she won't sabotage the trap. Broken locks and slashed tarps create louder wars. She will reroute by being present where presence can whisper no. She studies wind on her cheek, memorizes eddies around willow and culvert. She traces the long arc a careful animal could take, safe and slow, around the metal mouth and its humming promise. "I can be a soft fence," she tells the storm gently.
I can ask her to choose the path that stays hers. The crow answers with a single scold and lifts like a period from the line. Snow keeps falling, not in panic, but in patient handwriting, line after line over the drainage. Riley steps out before dusk, checks the anemometer once, and then her cheekbone instead. Wind from the north-northwest, slow and clean. She traces that invisible river with a finger and marks where her body must become a stone inside it. She walks the perimeter first, mapping what people will do. Headlights sweep the road. The culvert mouth waits under a tarp like a stage between acts. The generator is gone.
The quiet is worse. Riley tests the snow with her boot, prints vanishing even as they form. Good. She wants erasure. On her radio, she keeps it simple, one channel, volume low. "Holding north fence," she whispers. No answer is the answer she wanted. She places herself where wind will carry her scent, not toward the willow corridor, but into the culvert's approach, a dull warning written in breath. She stands, small and ordinary, beside the fence post with the salt lick scar. She will not wave, not chase, not block, only exist like an inconvenient thought. "If you turn, I'll be gone," she tells the dark. "If you approach, I become large." Minutes spool. Frost writes on her lashes. A rabbit crosses, stops, revises. Distantly town noise leans in. An ambulance's soft yodel, a door's hollow clap. Riley rolls a twig under her boot so it won't betray her with a snap later. Even prevention must be quiet. She shifts once, a measured step that relocates her silhouette nearer the culvert path without standing in it. "Read this," she breathes. "The easy way is not safe tonight." A shape considers her from the far willow, no more than a rearrangement of fog. The air thins, the cadence in her chest returns, two quick, one long. She lets the rhythm settle her shoulders. She is not the show, she is the pause. "Hold the line," she says, a thread of sound. "Choose the long arc. I'll make the short one feel wrong." The fog smooths, the shape unhooks from shadow, then hesitates as if reading a sign only animals can see. Riley does nothing but be. Somewhere, a crow mutters from its nighttime roost, a scratched signature on the sky. "I am the caution, not the chase," she tells the snow tonight. Snow continues its steady handwriting, refusing drama. The trap sleeps. The corridor learns to breathe. Night folds its wings. Snow hushes every hinge. Riley stands where her breath can drift like a slow warning toward the culvert's mouth, shoulders rounded, palms loose, the red lamp dark under her glove. The willow band is a darker river within the dark, and then the river gathers itself and steps ashore, black on snow. The bobcat is exact as a sentence finished at last. Ears take the wind, whiskers measure. She pauses where the short trail angles toward metal and tarpaulin, where human scent pools in a faint, acrid lake. Riley lets herself be counted. Head tilted slightly away, eyes lowered, she becomes obstruction without threat, grammar without command. The cold needles her lashes. Her heart keeps the vow, two quick, one long. "You owe me nothing," she breathes, the words barely heat. "Choose the way that keeps you whole." The cat waits the air. One forepaw lifts, dangling the decision between shadow and glare. A snowflake nosedives, lands, melts on black fur like a vanishing star. The paw settles, not forward, but sideways, into the willow's longer sentence. The body follows, ink poured into its native line. "Good," Riley says, softer than frost. "Write it your way." She shifts a fraction to thicken her scent along the culvert path, then stills again, erasing the move with patience. In town, a siren peals and dims. Here, only the delicate arithmetic of paws on crust, counting the safe spaces between noise. Beyond the bend, the trap waits for a life that will not arrive. Technicians, coffee-cupped and careful, murmur at dawn about batteries and angles. "Strange," one says, peering at undisturbed snow. "She should have passed." Another shrugs. Maybe the storm moved her. Riley is already gone. She brushed her prints with a sprig of willow, backtracked in an upstream walk to confuse pattern, and let the snowfall take the rest. At the cottonwood fan she stops once, face lifted to the colourless morning. "Freedom looks like nothing," she says to the empty air. "That's why it works." Riley smiles once, invisible, then folds back into weather again. Crows nudge daylight open. In the willow band, a dark life continues, untagged, untrapped, intact. Morning comes unremarkable, the way safety prefers. Riley downloads her last cards at the desk above the feed store. The frames show a neat pre-dawn crossing at the willow margin. Posture easy, tail a brief brush, pads set with surgeon's care. No trap prints, no churn at all. She assembles a report that refuses spectacle, timestamps, wind bearings, corridor notes written as verbs instead of coordinates, favors, skirts, slips, avoids. A section titled Mitigation, Recommendations replaces maps with actions, reinforce poultry enclosures, lock trash, shift one bus stop by 50 yards during twilight weeks. She types a sentence and leaves it standing alone. No location data included. Then she adds, quieter, proof without possession. At the warden's office, fluorescent light makes every concern look larger. He reads, lips moving. "You're giving us enough to act," he says at last, without telling trophy chasers where to aim. "That's the point," Riley answers. "Show care, not capture." He nods, scratching a note. Policy inches. The culvert plan is shelved. A notice goes out instead. Coexistence measures in effect. A grant appears for co-op hardware cloth. The bus stop slides the width of a parking lot. Nothing makes the news except a photograph of new signage. Keep wildlife wild. Back upstairs, Riley pulls one more card. The bobcat ghosts through cottonwood shade, a calm little comma of tail behind. She doesn't print it. She closes the window and lets the room be ordinary. "Go on," she says to the empty air. "Write your life where I can't." Spring loosens the drainage.
Snowmelt writes runes through last year's grass. Riley walks the corridor not to hunt proof, but to thank it. The willow band smells green. On a mud patch, she finds two sets of prints, the familiar, neat ovals, and beside them, smaller echoes, close as breath. She kneels without touching. "Maybe," she whispers, "if the land agrees." By the road, a new sign blinks, "Keep wildlife wild." A boy on a scooter reads it to his sister. "Does that mean we can't see it?" She shrugs, then grins. "Maybe it means we can't make it look at us." Their mother calls, "Leave room," a phrase that hangs like a stitched blessing. At the feed store,
the warden meets Riley. "The call's slowed," he says. "Whatever you did, it worked." "I didn't do," she answers. "I stopped." He nods, feeling the weight of that verb. "Then we'll keep stopping." Evening returns colour to the cottonwoods. Crows unspool across the sky, the old black thread working a new seam. Riley stands in the hush and lets the corridor forget her. "Not everything we love needs to wear our name," she says. "Not every safety needs a tag." Out in the willow, something dark and low flows from shade to shade, unbothered by language. No cameras, click. No traps, wait.
What remains is a passage and a secret, the miracle of a life continuing just beyond the edge of applause. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart even a little, that's our greatest joy. If you'd like, please share your thoughts in the comments. We'll keep bringing you stories that stay with you, so please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.